Hello everyone. Even though we never ever met before, we definitely have at least one thing in common. We are being exposed to messages, services, etc. that are being produced using artificial intelligence. Whether we like it or not, that's the case. And it's very, very likely that this is going to increase, for sure. Given this, Microsoft turned to Ernst Young or EY over a year and a half ago, and asked, as being an advisor and business advisor, a transformation partner for a number of companies across Europe and across the globe, would you mind taking on the job of performing a study and analysis on artificial intelligence and where the European companies are, and would really set aside the ones that are far advanced and have quite a lot of experience? We took on that job, and I'm going to share some of the findings with you today. 277 companies, and unfortunately none Icelandic companies form part of the study. However, since you guys are all part of the Nordics, I've pulled out Nordic data. So throughout the session today, I'm going to share European data versus Nordic data with you. So about close to 90, 85 odd companies out of the Nordics across 7 industries were analyzed. We did analysis, interviews, surveys, and we used external data sources as well. By the way, 15 countries were covered. But let's start off with artificial intelligence, most definitely a buzzword, but how did we define this going into the study? I think that's quite important for this session that the time we're spending together here today. So definitely robotics, not robot process automation like pure RPA, but where we build in intelligence into the processes. Speech recognition, to understand what I say when I talk to someone, i.e. a robot. Virtual agents, on the same note. Natural language processing, how can I put up models that actually understand free text and speech? Text analysis, on the same note. Biometrics, definitely. Facial recognitions, thumbs, etc. Machine learning with algorithms, and we're going to talk about that. Deep learning, neural networks, and also computer vision. That was the set. Why did we pick up these terms? It's because all of these have learning mechanisms in them. It's not a project and then you're done and that model is going to sit there. It needs to be nurtured, it needs to be looked after, and it's going to develop over time because there is a learning mechanism put into it. On a broad term, across these 7 industries, you can all relax now. It's only 4% of them that really view themselves as very, very advanced. So if you don't think your business or your organization is extremely advanced, there is still opportunity for you to catch up. However, this is 10 to 12 months ago, so things has moved, most definitely. However, if we look at the 57% mark, we talk about companies that expect artificial intelligence to have a high impact on their business areas. That's a much larger number than 4%. So that's probably more than 50%, more than half of the companies, definitely. And this was 10 months ago, or 12. It's probably looking slightly different today. 61 of them were in a planning stage or in a piloting stage, i.e. they were actually doing stuff. This number for sure has changed since we talked to the companies around February, March time last year. The ones that were in piloting, where are they? They are probably releasing at the moment or thinking about releasing. The ones that were in piloting are in planning, they are in piloting phase now. So that's also a question. Where is your company? Are you in piloting, planning, releasing, or are you very, very advanced? Or are you actually sitting on the sideline thinking about what are we going to do, what is our approach to this? 10% of the companies, not too many actually, actively using acquisition as a way to bring in a competence, bring in services, bring in functionality into the business. This one is also, as you can imagine, some of these acquisitions are linked to companies that believe that the ecosystem they are operating in might change. So it's not only bringing in new capabilities or competences, it's actually positioning themselves in a different way for an ecosystem and business environment that they believe going to look different when you come out in about 3 to 5 years' time. The most mature ones expect that artificial intelligence will most definitely empowering the employees. That's a very high number. Out of 277 companies, 80% of them believe that this is going to have an impact on the way we are operating internally, having an impact on our people, on the way we are organizing our business, our operating models. And 71% of the companies respond that it's going to be a very important topic and it's being discussed at the C-level, C-suite level within our businesses. Let's look at some numbers here. So this is kind of a maturity curve. So if you're not doing anything, you are very, very light green. If you are far more advanced than the rest, you will be dark green. What can we take out of this slide up there? A couple of things that we can read out of it is that technology, media, and telecom, services, and financial services are the ones that have come the furthest. While you will see like consumer products retail is further behind. That we got a lot of more physical products in a retail business that we are moving around compared to what we do for a telco or for a financial services organization. So it kind of makes sense that it's maybe easier for the services companies, the top 3 there, to actually start playing around with this because they have large data sets. They are more used to running relatively advanced models, which put them in the front seat a bit. I'm not saying they have great data quality, I'm saying that they are more used to potentially running with large data sets. But if we start looking, this is what it looks like today or what it looked like 10 months ago. In terms of the anticipation of what it's going to look like going forward, then it's a different story, eh? Don't know, couldn't bother, this is nothing for me, it's not going to impact me. It's like an ostrich putting his or her head into the sand a little bit. Don't believe this actually, taking a stake is not going to have an impact, to having a significant impact or a very high impact. What strikes one when looking at these numbers is that at a minimum, 75% of that industry believes that it's going to have a high to very significant impact. When we take this outcome of this study that is done through surveys, qualitative interviews, etc., it's probably something that's going to come our way. So this should probably be built into the strategy that we are looking at in terms of our businesses going forward, and we need to relate to this. And we need to make an active decision whether it's going to have no impact or significant impact. Any risks that was raised? Sure. If we just back the clock a little bit, if we turn it back around March, April last year, what was just about to come into force? GDPR. GDPR was just about to come into force. So regulatory requirement was across Europe, 15 countries, 7 industries, definitely the far most or strongest risk that they identified. And that was across the industries. And that makes sense because having the opportunity to use data and store data is an important aspect if one wants to move forward with this and be really successful. The other risk that was raised as a significant one was the upkeep of the system. We're going to probably utilize the systems much more than we've done historically. And we still have downtime on our systems today. And an information overload, both internally and externally. One needs to be cautious about, even though we sit on a lot of information, what information is actually interesting to use and share and communicate and have a dialogue around. So that was some of the takeaways. Do you remember the definition that we ran? So machine learning all the way across to biometrics. Let me share with you what the European companies across the 15 countries are saying in the industries. Machine learning, definitely a very high impact. They believe that that is definitely something that they're going after. Smart robotics, they're probably already automated part of their processes using either robots or APIs or STPs, straight-through processing or what have you. Natural language processing, starting to be able to really work with unstructured data. Neural networks, a bit text analysis, and you can read it all by yourself. Let's see what the Nordics are saying. The Nordics is slightly more advanced in a number of areas. Machine learning definitely being one, about a 10% pickup rate above the European market. The same with building intelligence into the automation of the processes. Most definitely an area where the Nordics are ahead. And there is a kind of a story around here that the Nordics is generally slightly ahead or quite a bit ahead. I guess the only one will be computer vision and biometrics. I think biometrics has a reason. We have relatively good passports. They have a high standard. They are sought after. And we also have digital identification in most of the Nordic countries, which means that the need for biometrics is not as big here as in some of the other countries. So that's a bit of a takeaway. I thought we should spend a little bit of time on this particular slide right here. So let me start with what we're going to have on the two sides here. Relevant uses of artificial intelligence and relevant benefits as well. So this is hopefully something that you can bring home and have a discussion around, or you're actually going to get a receipt on, yes, we are discussing the right things in our business. So relevant uses we are talking about, or areas of usage, is predicting something's going to happen. So by using lots of data, we can predict a certain scenario or a couple of certain scenarios going forward. And you see a difference between Europe and the Nordics there. Bringing a greater degree of automation across our operations, most definitely. Gaining more insights, using more data sets, actually cross-looking at data sets to a larger extent. And the other one is personalize our messages. I think that was one of the opening sessions this morning. Netflix obviously was mentioned, and a number of other examples. Prescribe. It's much less believing that that's going to be very relevant. Prescribe, in this case, it means that the models that we are building and that we are applying, we're actually letting those models make the decision and just keep on going, rather than having them predict something and we as humans make an active choice and saying, yes, this is what we want to do. That's a big difference, because when we're letting them taking the decisions, we are out of control a bit, aren't we? It becomes to a larger extent a black box. And in those industries where that is heavily regulated, like telecom and financial services, for example, you probably need to be able to explain the models and why a certain decision was taken. Otherwise, you're going to get some pretty fines that you need to pick up. In terms of where do we see those benefits coming? You remember that thing around operations? the way we are executing within our business and organization, that's a very high belief that that's going to have a huge impact, and greater so in the Nordics than across the wider Europe. End customers, how we are communicating, how we are selling, how we are servicing, same story there. High area of belief or expectations. Transforming products. This does not necessarily mean that there's going to be new services and new products. Things are not going to go away. We are still going to need to lend money to buy a house or whatever case you have, but it's going to look different. The product, the way it's behaving, the way decisions are being taken around it, and the way that product or service is delivered, that's going to change. So that's how you should interpret that. And empowering employees by getting us more information. Someone in some of the other sessions today, I saw that we can actually pick out intelligence out of parts of the humans, and we can have the humans make more decisions or spend more time on more value-adding tasks where humans actually can actually outperform our models. Two questions that I want to give you the opportunity to bring with you home. What are the relevant uses of artificial intelligence in your company? One of them. The other one, what business benefits do you expect artificial intelligence to generate? Bring those home and reflect on them. If you do it tonight over a glass of wine, or whether you do it on Monday morning over a cup of coffee, it's your choice. Next one is how it's being deployed. Remember, we were looking at the very advanced companies and asked them, what has been very successful when you're going on this journey? Or what would you have do different if you were doing it over again? So a couple of things came out. So top down is key to have the buy-in and the support. In terms of bottom up, yes, that's quite common as well. But the really upside sits on the combination of the two. I think the interesting thing is actually the lower one. So business pull versus IT push, and then the combination where Nordic is far ahead compared to the rest of Europe. We're probably running our business with less silos. We might have a better cross-understanding across the two areas, business versus IT. But this came out as a very, very important success factor. And because I'm going to have a couple of use cases, and I kind of come back to this. The last one before we're going into the use cases are you working with structured data or unstructured data? Unstructured data being, for example, speech or text messaging, or you're writing something, or you're talking to someone, for example, or you're picking data, information out of social media. That would be unstructured. Or are they in general using a combination of the two? They say that they in general are using a combination of the two, but I can guarantee you that it's not a 50-50 split. It's rather a 95 of structured data, and at best case 5% of unstructured data being used. Next one is, are you using internal or external data? And how is that looking? Usually the companies start working with internal data because they have access to that, they can play around with it, and then you add on external data over time. Let me take you through a couple of case studies. I got about 10 odd minutes left, so where we put this into use, and it will probably bring it to life a little bit from your side as well. Hey, Philly. I wanted to start with a brand and a company that we're all familiar with called IKEA. IKEA turned to Ernst Young about 2.5, 3 years ago, and they were saying they struggle a bit to gain full value of traditional marketing campaigns. They needed to adapt to their customers' digital behavior. It's a perfect theme for this conference today. So what were we going to do? First of all, this is just in one country, one market where we started. IKEA is now rolling this out across the globe together with us. So we had 4 target groups. Some of them were high income customers, and some of them were customers that had a certain perception that IKEA wanted to change. And by the way, IKEA family, which is the membership club, have over 100 million members. So it's quite a decent company. We had a long exercise in terms of identifying 200 variables that we were going to take into this machine learning model. So after a while, we settled on about 200. And we used over 20 billion data points into the model. Was it worth it? Did we get anything out of it? IKEA got this out of it. Visits up 64%, and maybe as important or more important, 73% increase in spend. So that might be a business case for your business as well. Another one, predictive maintenance, making sure that we are running more efficient in terms of how we are using our equipment and not running on fixed schedules or fixing it when it's broken. That's another interesting case where you have manufacturing equipment. I can also tell you that we did a similar thing 2.5, 3 years for the metro in Oslo, where we use IoT with sensors to download data. The effect was that we were then using the information, and the mechanics were swapping spare parts as required based on the models that we ran, and the outcome was that they are now using fewer wagons or carriers in their metro system, and they are still serving the full population. So the cost benefit was quite dramatic for them. The fewer wagons, and they're actually breaking down less, and the maintenance cost is lower. Machine learning in banking industry. We're not going to have time to go through this in full detail, but they were losing market share. We started to play around with it. One of the key findings was that we lost a lot of, we identified data sets that they didn't have, so they're starting to collect that. The end story was that they were going after the wrong target group after a while. The model was actually not set up correctly. So we ran a risk of the model changing their business strategy over the radar. So the importance of having control of your model, understand what the model does, is quite important. However, spend went up 52%. So the top line growth was up 52% on the target group that was formed part of the business, which was also interesting, quite similar to the IKEA case. So, in this study, which you can download, you will see that there are 8 capabilities. Culture is one that we haven't talked so much about, open culture being very important to make this happen and identifying the variables and drivers you would like to have. The other one is external alliances and emotional intelligence as well, understanding what behavior a certain model will trigger and what that will lead to. And then you will have the benefits in the middle, which we've already been through. And the summary will be, if you haven't started, or if you're just about to, choose a step-by-step approach. That was definitely a success factor. Ensure executive leadership, that you have that support. Hire new skills ahead of the curve, so you are ready when your industry is transforming, because it's going to be tougher to get that competence into your building or reskilling your existing one, and also it will put you on the back foot. Build a data strategy. Information strategy, data strategy, and how you are collecting and storing your data is important, so you can cross-play with different data sets. And beyond all, trust is important. Everyone needs to trust what comes out of the models, and you need to build that emotional or human ingenuity into it. And when I've gone through this report and I've talked to a number of companies around it and have deep discussions with them, one thing strikes me. If you don't know how you're going to relate to this going forward, I have just one piece of advice. When you wake up in the morning and you hit that snooze button, some of you do, I know, I do definitely, that is not a strategy that I would advise on. Do not snooze in terms of the intelligent automation and the analytics and the artificial intelligence. Take an active stand on where you want to be and how you want to relate to it. So my final word would be, do not snooze. Please get up and do something about it. Thank you.